Dallas area. Give me some background about you.
Okay, my name is Crystal Mason. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, born and raised. Parents, Sherry Ann McGrady, James Mason. I have 3 children.
Being a Fort Worth native, I mean, tell us about growing up in Fort Worth. You know, you're in Fort Worth native. How is that?
Pretty okay. You know, I lived in Rolling Hills, Berry Hill, went to Trimble Tech High School, went to Jarvis Christian College, married and had kids by Sanford Hobbs, and just pretty much worked and was a parent here.
So, why did you choose Fort Worth? I mean, what is it about Fort Worth that you like about Fort Worth?
My mom.
Really? Okay.
Well, actually, my grandma, she came from East Texas, so she moved up here, and that's where we've been.
So family is
Correct.
Is there? So yeah. So it's really important for you to stay around family.
Correct. My family is everything.
So you have your family, you had your kids, and you know, tell us about life with you. I mean, you know, tell me about you, your likes, your dislikes. What do you like to do? Stuff of that nature.
Well, okay. What I like is doing a lot of activities with my kids. I owned Barber and a beauty shop, so a daycare, and I owned a couple of tax offices. So just pretty much managing business.
Your kids are
My kids are my life, my everything. Yes.
What are the ages?
I have a 24-year-old, 18 and 19, and I have custody of my grandbaby, 9 and 3.
So you would definitely say family is really important.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard you mention growing up in Fort Worth, staying there, and then you have your family that you're raising. So you say you have custody of your grandbaby. How is life like that for you?
Oh, it's been great. It's been pretty great. I love it. You know, my daughter, she's getting herself together and everything. So, yeah, I have them right now.
That's cool. What brought me down here and how you became known to fame is because an incident happened to you. But before we go into that incident, let's talk a little bit about, you know, there's something that happened in your past and anything of that nature.
Correct.
So tell us, you had mentioned one of your businesses was a tax
Yes.
office. So how was running a business? You're an entrepreneur, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there was some misfortune that happened to you
Correct.
previously in the past. Go ahead and talk about that a little bit.
Oh, well, I'm not going to go into detail
Right,
on it,
you
but I
don't.
will let you know that I did own a couple tax offices, and I was convicted of a nonviolent offense, and it was in regards to my tax office. It's Schedule C's, inflating and deflating returns, and I admit that, and I've done my time for that. So, and I really don't think that my federal situation has anything to do with this, you know, at this moment, because I've done that time already, so I shouldn't be held accountable for my past.
Take us to the day that you know, had a thought to say, hey, I want to vote.
Well, my mom was pretty much telling us, she's been telling me the whole week, Crystal, you know, you need to vote, you need to vote. And I'm like, okay, Mom, okay. And I waited all the way to the last day, and she was like, are you going to vote? I said, when I get off work, Mom, I'm going to go vote. So I got off work at 4:30 and drove, it was raining that day, drove to Rendon and picked up my niece, and we went to a local church to go vote. And they couldn't find my name on the list. So I was talking to this young gentleman, and he couldn't find my name on the list. And I'm like, I've been living here for 9 years, you know. I know I came here to vote here before. So he said, well, you know, you can fill out a provisional form. And I was like, okay. You know, I didn't have any clue about a provisional form. And he explained to me, well, if you're at the right location, it'll count. And if you're not, it won't. So that was pretty simple, you know. If I'm at the right location, then it's going to count. And if I'm not, it won't.
And this person was a person who was working the...
Yes, that was the front door.
So tell me about the feeling. I mean, was this your first time getting ready to go vote? I mean,
No.
Okay,
No,
so
no.
were
I
you
voted
excited
before.
or...
It was, no, really. It was just, I'm just going to go vote. Like my mom said, I really wasn't thinking about it because I had so much going on. And she was right, though, because I have voted before. So it was important. So I just went to go vote. It was just like normal. Like.
And this was for the 2016 election?
Correct, yes.
Presidential election?
Correct.
Wow. Okay. And you feel that it was so important for you to vote, regardless, right? Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right. And everyone else, it's important for them to vote as well.
Correct.
So we're back at the situation. So you talked to the guy, and the guy told you at the place, hey, you know, what he said in reference to it doesn't count if you're not there.
I was actually getting ready to walk out. And he said, well, you know, you can do a provisional form. And I was like, okay. You know, so when he told, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. So you're there.
Yes.
Right? And then while you're there, then all of a sudden, you're getting ready to walk out.
Yeah, but when he said I was on the list, and we looked, and then they went somewhere else in the back, and they came back, and it was just like, no, you're not on the list. And I was like, okay then. And then that's when the guy said, well, you know, you can do a provisional form. And, you know, I had to, you know, you stop to listen, especially when you're not aware of it. And that's when he explained to me. So then a lady she asked me for my ID. She took my ID, and she walked somewhere. And when she came back with some paper. And we went and we sat behind the table, and she was talking to me about some things, and she was just telling me, make sure, because she was walking me through everything, make sure everything matches on your driver's license. So that's what I was paying attention to when I was filling out this, you know, like everything matches exactly what's on the driver's license. Then she told me to go to this like station. So we went to the station, and I told her I wanted to do a straight ticket. You know, can you tell me? And she kind of like, you know, this is the area where you can do a straight ticket. And I did it, and I left like a normal day and went home, and I was like, Mom, I voted, you know.
How was that feeling for you after you finished voting?
Oh, well, I felt like that it was the right thing to do. You know, I pay taxes every day. So I felt like that I did what was right.
What was your mom's response when you told her you voted?
She was happy. She was happy when I pulled up, and she knew I didn't get out that car, and I picked up my niece.
And voting apparently seems to be important for
Yes,
mom.
it is. It very much is.
Wow, that's awesome. So take me to the day that did you receive notification?
Nothing. What happened was I was at work, and my supervisory release officer called me, and she was like, hey, I need you to come in. I was like, okay, you know, because on federal, you really don't go to the office. It's more like you just do things online. Randomly, you might, you know, do a UA if it's based on if you had the type of offense you had, okay? So I went, and she was like, she talked to me a little while and didn't want nothing. I was like, okay. And she's like, I'll talk to you later. It's like, okay. So I went downstairs, and a lady grabbed me. She asked me, am I Crystal Mason? I said, I am. And she said,
just out the blue.
Yeah. And then she's like, you're under arrest. And I was like, for what? You know, because I know I'm doing everything. I've just got out, rehabilitated myself in society, went to school, going to work, taking care of my kids, you know, so I know I'm not doing anything wrong. There's nothing, you got the wrong person, that's what I'm thinking. And she said, you're being arrested for illegally voting. I said, illegally voting? And she's like, yeah. And I said, no, ma'am. When I went to go vote, I used my identification. I used the proper information. No, ma'am, I didn't. And she said, oh, put your hands behind your back. So I put my hands behind my back, and I went in, and she told me, are you aware that you can't vote? And I said, no. And she said, if you're on probation, you can't vote. And I was like, well, I'm not on probation, I'm on supervised release, you know, so I'm confused completely. So I was like, well, no one told me that. I've never signed anything, so where is this coming from? How are you telling me this? And here I am today.
So, what was the feeling that went through your mind? You're walking downstairs and she says you're under arrest.
Yeah, overwhelmed. I mean, like shocked, like, no, this cannot happen, so.
So take me to the day they took you to trial.
Well, on my trial situation, I was looking at when my supervisor testified on the stand and stated that I've been doing everything I'm supposed to do. They've never had a problem with me. I've been following all the rules. No one never told me I couldn't vote. No one never told me, I've never signed anything. We sign paperwork that we can't be around felons, we can't be around guns, drugs, stuff like that. We sign those papers. We have a term of our conditions that we have, too, that you have to go by. Nowhere I read, and no one told me that I couldn't vote, so I had no idea.
So you're going through this trial, you're seeing people testify against you.
Correct.
And what's going through your mind while you're sitting at this table? Because a lot of times people hear, oh, a person's been arrested, and then they're convicted or they're gone. They don't realize there is thoughts that go through your head while you're sitting at this table.
When I sat at the table and I seen my neighbor get up and testify, first I asked my attorney, what is he doing here? He's like, huh? I'm writing on a piece of paper. That's my neighbor. What is he doing here? He was like, your neighbor? I'm like, yes, that's my neighbor. What is it? That's Carl. What is he doing here? But when he got on the stand and testified, did he help me fill out my provisional form? He asked me some questions. He raised his hand and like I swore to something that he said.
But he wasn't the one that helped you fill out.
I know Carl. He stays right across the street from me. When I walk out my front door, I see his door. I know who he is. I know his family. Matter of fact, let's just say this. When somebody came on the street that was trying to take one of his daughters, was trying to get him to get in the car, it was my mom that ran out there, that was yelling, hey, and the car drove off, and we ran and told him that, hey, this truck was trying to get this baby to get in the car. This is the same neighbor, So this was really overwhelming to listen to him testify and say the things that he said. But again, it's his position. So I realized at that time, I've already been going through, when I first got there, I was going through a lot of stuff in my neighborhood where we had on one corner, it was the bus stop, but we had a neighbor that sat out there with a gun and called the kids' names. We had Mansfield police come out, over Tarrant County come out, until actually Mansfield ISD school bus district changed the bus stop and put them into, now the bus stop is in front of my house. So we have a one-way in, one-way out. So, and then I realized that, when I got there, they had locked my water meter. They had put a lock on it. Then they turned around and we had to call the water department because you have to do a report on this stuff. Then they pulled concrete. They'll cut the water off. So when you get up to go to work and you're getting ready to wash your face and stuff, you realize, dang, the water is, what's going on? So of course
So you're being harassed.
It's been going on, but that still wasn't running me away. But I never knew it was directly across the street. So now it makes me think, what else have you done? So it's kind of, it saddens me, and to realize that racism is still here and it's really real today, and so what was his whole, my thing is, what was the whole purpose behind this? You're my neighbor. He testified on the stand and he said, when I called the DA the first time, I left a message. Carl, you're my neighbor. Why didn't you come across the street and knock on the door and say, hey, Crystal, are you aware that you shouldn't have voted? Maybe you might need to get in contact with your supervisory release officer, or maybe, or if you were at the place where I was at the church, why didn't you say, hey, are you still on supervised release? I don't think you can vote or anything. And what got me was when I went to trial after listening and seeing everything, the first thing I did was go to that church. But the way they had described where I was sitting, how was this and how was that, I went straight to that church as soon as I got out of trial. Not only did I call him, I called the pastor to the church that we went to. I asked him, I need footage. I need you to show me, at this right here is going to be the key to everything. Because you're going to see who helped me, you're going to see everything. I asked him, can you please give me the footage of when I came in? He told me that the DVR system had broken since then, and he don't have it. You would have seen, they had testified that I was there from 4 o'clock, one testified from 4:30, one testified I was there at 2 o'clock during the mid, where it was traffic and everything. I got off work at 4:30. It was raining. I had to drive from here, because I was working on Elm Street. So I had to drive from here all the way to Rendon. I didn't make it there until close to like 6 something, right before they were closing. And it would have just proven a lot of stuff, but the church said they didn't have the footage. And that's where I was looking at, like, if I knew it was going to be like this, I felt like that my attorney should have got that information. It was the key point of everything. It would have.
But to your defense, who thinks about, recording stuff? I mean, you're just going to do your civic duty. You're going to go vote. No one predicted this. When they handed down the verdict, was it a jury verdict?
No, it was a trial by judge.
Trial by judge.
Mm-hmm.
When he handed down the verdict from this particular judge, what went through your mind?
Wow. Not again. This can't happen again. Not again.
Kim, you are, let's just state the position that you are for her, for Crystal.
I am Crystal's civil attorney.
And Kim, walk me through when you heard about the case and what went through your mind and what made you decide to get involved with this case.
Well, when I first heard about the case, I've had some dealings in Tarrant County. And when I first heard about the case, the first thing that went through my mind was, this is ridiculous. Tarrant County, you may not be familiar, but Tarrant County is the same county that sentenced the quote-unquote affluenza teen, Ethan Couch, to no jail time for killing 4 people. He actually killed 4 people and was sentenced to 0 days in jail. 0 days in prison. That was his sentence in the same county. And so to have a African-American woman to be sentenced to 5 years in prison for casting a provisional ballot was absolutely absurd to me. So it was something that I was happy to be on board to assist with.
So, Crystal,
Mm-hmm.
when there was a story that broke after your conviction happened, that a person did almost the same thing.
Correct.
Did you hear about that story?
I did.
What went through your mind when you heard that? And from my understanding, their conviction was probation.
Mm-hmm.
What went through your mind when you?
Again, everything has been overwhelming. It was like, it's several stories. You have a couple of judges that did the same thing, and I was looking at, like, for my situation, what was my intent? What was I gaining from this, You got judges that became a judge. You got a person that she was doing this to ensure that the person that she was voting for win the election. I was just simply voting, doing everything the correct way. So I assumed.
So Kim, because you are a civil attorney, you've been advising, I'm pretty sure, at your level. When you hear about this situation that occurred, as far as voting is concerned, from a social standpoint, do you think that this sends a discouraging message to individuals to not vote, or do you feel like this is what the law is?
I certainly don't feel like this is what the law is. Let me make something perfectly clear. It is absolutely legal for convicted felons to vote in the state of Texas. There's a lot of buzz on the internet. Well, she was a felon, she should have known she couldn't vote. Well, that's not true. That's only true in certain states. Here in the state of Texas, convicted felons do have the right to vote. That's one thing that is kind of getting, I guess a lot of people don't understand. Also, Crystal filed a provisional ballot, and the law in Texas is unclear about whether a provisional ballot counts as a vote. There are national regulations that are put in place that essentially establish the parameters for provisional ballots, that it's used for when a person isn't quite certain as to whether or not they are eligible to vote. And to criminalize that process is unjust and unconstitutional. That is the whole purpose of a provisional ballot. In the event that you're not eligible, your ballot will not be counted in the election. And if you are eligible, then your ballot will count. But that's the whole point. If you aren't certain whether or not you're eligible, they have provisional ballots for those individuals who aren't sure if they're in the right place, not sure if they're eligible. There was no intent to vote illegally. There was no intent to commit voter fraud or do anything nefarious. Crystal went to cast a vote and wasn't aware that her doing so, the state of Texas would consider that, or Tarrant County, I would say, would consider that a criminal act.
So what happens? I mean, where do you go from here after your conviction? I think you guys filed you can explain it as far as looking at your case to see would the judge overturn his
Right.
own ruling. What happens after that? Tell me the steps that you guys have gone through.
So Crystal's criminal attorneys, as well as I, helped prepare a motion for new trial. And in filing that, basically the judge would have to agree to disregard his previous ruling and grant Crystal a new trial. Last week he ruled against that. He ruled basically denied our motion for new trial. So the next step is to appeal Crystal's original conviction, and that's where we are in the process of drafting the appellate documents at this point.
Did this current judge give a reason why he denied it?
He just essentially went down the state's logic that basically that he basically agreed with the state's logic. I'll just say that, which obviously we don't agree with. The ACLU filed an excellent amicus brief that outlined the Help Americans Vote Act, which, like I said, is the basis of the provisional ballot. So we are hoping that the appellate court is much more reasonable and not as politically motivated. You mentioned earlier about Tarrant County and whether or not this discourages people from voting. I firmly believe, as a social justice advocate, I have had dealings with Tarrant County. Tarrant County boasts of being the reddest urban county in the country, and they are, and they want to keep it that way. So any way they can suppress the liberal vote, as they deem it. I still, to this day, have never asked Crystal who she voted for, but that's a perception, right? And when you have the election judge personally calling the district attorney, I'm certain he knows who Crystal voted for. The district attorney happens to be a Republican, and the election judge personally called the district attorney regarding Crystal's vote. There is a concerted effort to suppress the black vote in Tarrant County and to suppress the liberal vote in Tarrant County.
Why Why do you think Crystal, though? I mean, you know, from, or either one of you guys can answer. Why do you think it's you? You know, I
It's
mean,
her neighbor. It's her neighbor who happens to obviously, you know, have the number of the DA on speed dial and be able to personally call and leave a message. Everything about this case is completely unorthodox. Everything about it, from A to Z, it's completely unorthodox, and it is, in my belief, a concerted effort to suppress the vote in Tarrant County.
So a lot of people will say, well, hey, she got convicted. Do you have a date that you're supposed to turn yourself in? How does that work? You know, Kim?
So she is currently on release on an appeals bond, on appellate bond. So she will be out on bond throughout the appellate process.
Crystal, this situation that you're going through right now, what would be your message to people who are watching this, who are discouraged by listening to you or listening to your situation? What would be your statement to them?
My statement would be, don't stop voting. I've been dealing with it, like I've been telling myself, like, I'll never vote again, I'll never vote again. But I'm really like, that's from just going through what I'm going through right now. I would say, don't stop voting, you know, because that's exactly what I guess they want us to do.
I'm glad to hear her say that, actually, because I've been with her in several interviews, and she has said, I wish I'd never voted, I wish I'd never voted. And I was like, that to me is the tragic part about this, is that, you know, and that's what Tarrant County wants people to feel. They want people to feel like, I'm not ever going to vote again. Because if you think that you can go to prison for 5 years for voting, who's going to come to the polls? Nobody's going to show up. And so that's what they want. And it pained me to hear Crystal say that she wished she had never voted and that she wasn't ever going to vote again. So I'm glad to hear her say, you know, to people to don't stop voting, because the law here in Texas is not clear. And we need to get legislators and judges to clarify the law with regard to voting. And that's the way you make change. That's the way you make your voice heard. And I'm glad this is the first interview I've been in where she has said to, you know, encourage people to continue to vote. Certainly make sure here in Texas, if you do have a felony, it is perfectly legal to vote as long as you have completely discharged your time, as well as any period of probation, and apparently, according to Tarrant County, any supervisory release. You know, but make sure you've discharged any, you know, suspended sentence or anything like that. But as long as your sentence has been discharged, felons do have the right to vote in the state of Texas.
I personally can't help but to think back on the history of poll taxing and how Texas used to have a tissue ballot here, and Texas used to have a long history of suppressing the vote. And I just can't help but go back and think about all of the history that African Americans had to endure just to vote. And here we are in 2018, you're going through some of the same things that they were going through back then.
Well, if you think about it, Mark, across the country, if you look at race relations across the board, not just with voting, with dining, with swimming, with various ordinary things, African Americans are faced with the same things they were facing back then. They're being disenfranchised, they're being, you know, harassed, and being arrested for doing things that we would consider normal everyday activities. And we are living in perilous times right now in this country. So it's not just with voting. You're seeing that all across the country, that we're kind of taking a step back when it comes to civil rights. And that's why this case is so important. That's why it's so important that this case is resolved correctly, because it means so much more than just Crystal Mason. Black people have fought, bled, been beat, hosed, and killed to vote. And to be here in 2018 where they are jailing people for voting, it's very problematic. Very problematic.
Crystal, what is your family saying? You're going through this.
My family right now is my energy. So, they try to stay strong for me as well as I'm trying to stay strong for them. And what to tell Kim, what really kind of changed my mind is all the support that I'm getting, all the different messages that I'm getting from everybody that was like, the support, one thing. First of all, my main support is my church, Friendship West, Pastor Freddie Haynes, and he's there for me at any time, praying for me. He's just right there for me. And that's what it's been, just God, the prayers, and just my faith. And so listening to people that don't even know me, that reach out, and the words of encouragement, when I'm just saying, oh, I just wish I never voted, kind of made me feel like that, yeah, you're right, and so I felt like, I really feel like I did the right thing, and it's just a lot of support from everybody, and I thank everybody that has reached out to me and that's really been very supportive.
So what does justice look like for you? And for you, I just ask you, what do you want?
What I believe that's going to happen is everything is going to work out for his good. My faith is in God. And as long as I got him, everything is going to be okay. I'm going to be okay.
Look, Kim, people will watch this and they will be pissed. And the first thing they will say is, F this system. And Chris, you alluded to the fact that you kept saying you want people to vote. Kim, you said you want people to vote. But could you speak to those people who will listen to this and say, this is the reason why I'm not going to vote?
This is the reason why you should vote. Mm-hmm. These judges are elected. This is the reason why you should vote. Vote people in to draft clear and concise legislation. So vote for your legislators and vote for these judges so that they will accurately interpret the law and not hand down biased sentences, not be heavy-handed when your skin is a certain shade, and give people a slap on the wrist when your skin is another shade. That's why voting is important. That's why we see these disparities, because these people are elected, and when people like us sit out, it's detrimental. It's detrimental. So it is imperative now more than ever that we let our voices be heard and show up at the polls en masse. Bring a friend or two or five. It's imperative, because that's the only way you change this. That is the only way you change this. These judges that, will give someone who killed 4 people probation, and the district attorney who will actually elect to prosecute someone for casting a provisional ballot, vote them out. Because if you don't want it to be your family member or your friend or your coworker, vote them out. Because this is unjust. This is absolutely unjust. The same district attorney that can give a judge probation for forging hundreds of signatures, which in and of itself is hundreds of independent crimes, give him probation, but yet turn around and give Crystal Mason 5 years in prison and prosecute her to the fullest.
Is that the max for this particular fine?
For this, no, it's not the.
It's not the max.
It's not the max for this particular offense. However, it's extreme and it is egregious and it is a complete miscarriage of justice. And that's why voting is imperative. It is crucial today, now more than ever, I would encourage people, if you look around and you see what's going on around us, that comes from years of complacency. We've been getting by and things have been okay. We had a black president. All is right with the world. We've sat back, we've stayed home. We've made numerous excuses not to show up at the polls, not just in the general elections, in local elections, because these folks in Tarrant County, they're elected in years that there is no presidential vote. So we've got to stay active, we've got to stay vigilant, we've got to stay involved. We have got to, if we want a seat at the table, we have to show up.